and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I will be your host for this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, or whenever you're going to be listening, because after all, it's your podcast. Now, joining me today, he's been on many, many times. We're actually just counting up before he came on. It's been lots. It's almost like he's a co-host. It's the man. It's the man with a plan. It's the man who's not. He's not outside the box. He's inside the box. It's Peter Blenkharn from Inside the Box Boardgames. So hello, Peter.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good actually. I've had a long day. It's been very, very productive though.
Good.
You know, sorting out people's problems, rescuing cats from trees.
The usual one, yeah.
And then, you know, receiving mysterious packages in the mail that turn out to be little boxes of joy, which is always kind of good fun. For people who haven't listened before, thank you for joining us. The reason that we do this is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts out there about board games. So there's just not enough. There's actually only about 2.5 of us in Scotland, because there's us, there's Unlucky Frog Gaming with Ben and Josh, who've been on. They're lovely. And there's also the First Player token as well, who we actually spoke to the other week. So there you go. So, you know, contact has been made and negotiations are underway. But today we're going to have a little chat with Peter about... we're going to talk about Kickstarter campaigns, and we're going to talk a little bit about Sub Terra, because Peter's been on the show quite a few times, and we've been talking about Sub Terra. We're going to also have a little chat about what happened after that, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the Newspeak campaign, and then we're also going to talk about a nice little tabletop type association that we'd like you to know a little bit about. So, first of all, Peter, it's good to have you back on.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
You know, it's been a while. It's been a couple of months. It's not been too long.
Fun, yeah.
Let's just dive in. We'll kind of set the scene. Sub Terra did very, very well on the Kickstarter, and everything was kind of going to plan, and then there were a couple of things that occurred during the kind of production phase of it, and then the fulfillment phase of it. Obviously you've been on kind of the Facebook groups, and you know, obviously within the kind of the campaign stuff and things like that as well. I mean let's start off. I mean, what were your thoughts? I mean, when did things kind of, maybe you felt there was a couple of kind of bumps that kind of turned up? When was it the first thing you went, oh, this is a bit more trickier to kind of get fulfilled and get produced than we originally kind of planned?
Yeah, I think the kind of, I want to say, like, the kind of wave of euphoria that came from sort of the end of the campaign and the sort of month or so afterwards kind of came to a bit of a shuddering stop when we hit UK Games Expo. Despite the fact, you know, like, UK Games Expo in isolation was an amazing event. You know, we had a really great stall, loads of great engaged volunteers. You know, we won an award, that was amazing. Yeah. But that was kind of where the problems really started. I mean, back so that was in sort of the first weekend of June. I mean, back in April, I think it was 1st or 2nd of April last year, I went to Watson's factory, the manufacturer that we use for Sub Terra and for Statecraft as well. And I went around the factory, you know, had a great time, you know, talking with all the staff, you know, chatting with all the sort of the admin staff, talking through the process that they go through when we send them the files to actually getting it physically printed. And that was a really positive experience. And, you know, while I was there, they actually printed 5 copies of Statecraft and 5 copies of Sub Terra, as they would do, you know, and actually went through the mass manufacturing process, just did a few of them, just to kind of show me how it all worked and what would come out the other end of it, which was really exciting to see. The difficulty was then that, for one reason or another, they had a lot of significant delays in the factory. So while the original plan, which, to be honest, I made a misjudgment in not keeping to myself, I want to say. The original plan was to have everything fulfilled around about the time of the UK Games Expo.
Yeah.
We planned out, this is how much time it's going to take us to get the sort of surveys done, have all the information in, we'll send that to the factory, they'll have everything prepped and ready, they'll print them, it'll take them this long, then we'll have them, freight will take this long, if it's going to take a bit longer, or air freight or something like that, we've got the funds. Obviously that was pretty unlikely because blooming expensive. But anyway, we're getting into the UK, and if we're kind of thinking to ourselves, well, if we don't get to do the fulfillment actually at UK Games Expo, it'll be about the same time. So even if we have to air freight a few in advance, it'll be within a week or two. And we were kind of thought, well, we did say that this might be a possibility on the campaign. We've been quite open about that there might be a bit of lag between the two. But people seem generally fine with that. So we thought it'd be okay. The real problem came when we got closer to UK Games Expo, and it became increasingly clear that the factory had really overpromised, which kind of factored in with the fact that we've been more and more open about this plan that we cooked up to get everything ready for Expo.
Yeah.
And everyone knew that we were going to be selling games at Expo. When it became clear that they weren't going to get their pledges for quite a while, it became clear that people were unhappy, because the way the manufacturing process worked, they did a few of the core games first, and then they carried on doing the rest of the core games, sent that first chunk across for Expo, but it took so damn long to complete the rest of the stuff. Uh-huh. Because it all had to be shipped over in one go rather than shipping a few bits over at a time. It meant that it took a couple of months longer than expected, even at that point.
Did things? Logistically, you went up potentially from, let's face it, from a couple of hundred backers up to 6,500 backers.
Yeah.
That goes from putting in an order which people would have slotted into. We're going to slot your order into this 2-week period and then send it out. Did that vastly? I take it that must have vastly increased the timescale, even to produce the game itself. Did that have a bit of a delay on things as well? Because I take it they were waiting to get everything kind of together.
Yeah, it did. Probably the factories are. They're pretty good at managing that kind of thing. They have orders much bigger than the kind of ones that we're putting in as well, sort of fit around it. So, it was a big, complicated order that involved a lot of different suppliers, a lot of different processes in the factory. But probably the biggest thing that hit it was that kind of made that problem worse was that they were moving factories at the time. So I actually visited the new factory site in April. Sort of like they wanted to let me see kind of the new, bigger site and kind of impress their client with all this extra kit they were going to have. But the difficulty with that was that the transition period over which they slowly got new equipment to put into the new factory or transferred equipment from the old factory to the new factory meant that their normal workflow processes got thrown way off. So they couldn't hire staff fast enough, as far as I can tell, to kind of pick up that massive upsurge in business that we're getting. At the same time, they're trying to manage that very complex logistical exercise of moving an entire factory operation from basically one city to another. So it meant that because our project was very complicated, we had plastic and wood and card and grey board, and we had specialist printing effects like the UV fluorescent stuff it took a lot of very specialist knowledge, specialist sort of team from their end. It was all perfectly plausible. It just took a long time. And because of these kind of that complexity and the fact there was a lot of them, and they were moving factories at the same time, and they'd misjudged the amount of time they thought it was going to take them to make, it took a lot longer than we thought. And kind of, to be honest, like it was my inexperience that really compounded that problem, because I didn't see that coming, honestly, which is probably a bit naive of me, to be honest.
But in all fairness though, going from a couple of hundred orders up to 6,000, it's not like you get. Is there? There's probably blogs out there, but there's probably not a blog that says, "Listen, when your Kickstarter exceeds expectations by 3,000%, this is kind of what you should do." In hindsight, with the Expo thing, and I know there was kind of like a mixed response. There were obviously people kind of coming around to you and saying, "Well, it's fine," because you stated that you were going to be selling the games at the Expo. And then there was some that I think when they found out the delay, they were like, it became a little bit of a kind of a millstone around your neck is that it was
Yeah.
almost like you had made one mistake and then it was going to come back repeatedly again and again and again. I mean, in hindsight, would you have, if you had the time again, would you have gone ahead and still sold the games at the UK Games Expo? Or would you have held back a bit? Or did it have, I mean, I've heard defence of this because there has been other businesses that have gone ahead and sold kind of games or made games available at different expos, Gen Con and stuff like that. And it's a financial decision. I mean, you're there as a games, you can't just design a game and kickstart a game if you're not kind of selling the game as well. Would you have gone ahead and still sold the game again if you'd known it was going to be delayed that long? Or?
Probably not, to be honest. I mean, if with the knowledge that I have now, looking back in hindsight, I would have told myself, however long ago, it was 6-7 months ago, like, don't sell those games because this is going to take far longer than you originally expected. And the calculus that we had in our heads at the time was it's going to be within a few weeks, and that's the worst it's going to be. And I think when we had that conversation with backers, they were like, yeah, that's fine. Like, yeah, I guess it'd be nice to happen first, but I get, like, within a week or so, logistics is such that there's a bit of variability in there. I think that would have been fine, but there might be the old person who firmly believed that they should get their games first. I can kind of understand that perspective, to be honest, but I think, yeah, had we known it was going to be months later, like, I absolutely wouldn't have done. I mean, even, we bought a big stand at the UK Games Expo expecting to be able to sell, enthusiastically the copies of Sub Terra that we had. And it was a bit weird because we were like, we don't really feel comfortable doing it. But at the same time, we had to. I mean, we would have gone under if we hadn't, to be honest. By that point, we'd already committed. And we couldn't have rung up Richard and Tony and said, sorry, actually, we don't want this huge stand that you now can't sell. We weren't going to be able to do that, really. And realistically, it was such a massive opportunity for us to kind of show our success and show that we'd got this great new game and we were really excited about it. And, off the back of that, we got a lot of distribution orders. We won an award, which is really cool. And a lot of people got to see our game that we were really proud of. So, like, even with that said, I think we probably still would have been like, you know what, with that knowledge, no, let's not sell these games. Let's keep them back. Let's make sure we get everything squared away. Because if I'd known it was going to take this that long to get it all sorted, like you said, the calculation would have changed significantly. It would have been a case of, shall we sell a few of these games just to keep ourselves afloat a bit longer? Yeah.
For the sake of some very upset backers, understandably. Well, it's pretty clear what the answer should be, to be honest. But yeah, it didn't feel like it was a hard decision at the time, I think, because the understanding of how badly things could have gone wrong wasn't there. So one of the difficulties was that, when we launched Sub Terra, I say we, it was literally just me. The whole company was just me. Now we've got a few employees and we've got a lot of freelancers helping us out. And we've got a lot of supporters worldwide even that are kind of helping contribute to the projects. But at that point, I wasn't that experienced. I'm pretty much fresh out of university at that point. I tried to do what I could to prepare and get things sorted and kind of manage the problems, but I honestly got completely overwhelmed with it and just stuck on missed. And it's because of that a lot of these problems came about, to be honest. Kind of didn't prepare enough for enough of the eventualities that unfortunately did end up happening.
I mean, so things were stuck at kind of like you're waiting in the factory for things to kind of proceed. And then there was a little bit of a gap in updates between obviously the end of the Games Expo and then the next update was in kind of September. During that time, were you kind of getting what seemed like a kind of a bad news email on a regular basis? Was it a case of, oh my goodness, when do I update these people? When do I update these people? Or by that time you had to just kind of dive in and say, look, and this is what the kind of the situation was?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that really made the whole situation difficult was, if someone had sat me down in like July and presented me with a document that outlined exactly what all the problems were going to be, exactly what time, and exactly how it's going to pan out, I basically, it would have been easier. Just like, right, here you go, guys. This is what's happened. Like, this is what's gonna end up happening. This is why. No one's trying to con you out of anything. This is just a bad situation, and I'm sorry. And I would have been quite comfortable with that. It's quite difficult, I guess. It is difficult to be like, guys, I messed up, and I'm sorry. But it's even harder when you can't get a clear answer. Like, understandably, people are like, why has it gone wrong? And then when you say, well, it's kind of a bit of this, a bit of that, people are like, well, it sounds like you're making excuses. It doesn't sound like you're being honest. And then people obviously call into question whether you're being honest in general. Like, can they actually hold you to your word? And to a great extent, I think that's the kind of the key value of a Kickstarter creator is how much you can trust them. Like, at the end of the day, regardless of how you see the Kickstarter process, and there's obviously a lot of different opinions about how it does and should work, you put in money onto a thing that may or may not arrive, and you put in your trust in a person that says you're going to get that thing. And what ended up basically happening over that period of time was that we were getting a lot of kind of incomplete or inaccurate information. So, we were getting information from the factory on, when things are going to be complete, and then, the timeline would change daily. I keep bugging them for an update, and then we get something that was wildly inaccurate compared to the thing they gave me the day before.
Did that then kind of put you off from issuing an official update if you knew that the things were kind of a little bit woolly? Because in all these situations, the comment section on anything at all where things get slightly salty, be it a YouTube channel comment to, anywhere, a forum comment, Twitter, Facebook, things, there are people that have a genuine kind of concern to say, listen, we haven't had an update, or we were waiting for this and I've been promised this, or what's this about this, what's this about that. And then you get the guys that are just going, they seem to transform into some kind of pretty hate machine kind of thing. That's it. You've taken my money. I'm never ever going to get this back. I've not heard anything from you, kind of thing. All the information seems to be wildly inaccurate. You keep kind of changing your tune. Is it hard from a person where you're ultimately taking responsibility? Because the most difficult thing is easy enough to say, well, it's the factories. The factory should have done this. I should have done this. Is it hard to try and filter out all of the feedback that you're getting from different people, be it the kind of the backers, kind of, especially some of the ones that were a bit maybe across the line, or some that were just like, listen, I'm really disappointed in this, you just kind of feel let down.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to stay focused and say, listen, I've got to focus on this project. I can't let things like this kind of really kind of drag me down? Or did you find, was it affecting things like mental health, your mental health and things like that?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. I don't think it's kind of weird to talk about it, to be honest. I mean, I don't want it to sound like an excuse, because I don't think it is. But yeah, I mean, it does significantly impact you and, the team in general. When you get a project like a Kickstarter project where everyone's so emotionally invested in the thing, the people running the project, it's not just a job. It's not just, a day in the office, even though sometimes literally it is at the moment. This is a company that isn't really what you think of a company as being. It's a group of friends in a room that are really excited to make a thing, and they really enjoy making a thing, and they really want to share it with people that they think might enjoy it. So it does hurt when someone says something a bit mean. I think largely, to be honest, I mean, interactions I've had with a lot of backers or customers or whoever who said something that on the face of it is like, that was a bit mean, or whoa, like, what the heck, where did that come from? Generally, it's just a communication thing. Like, I've talked to customers before where you read the message, you're like, oh my god, like, where did that come from? It's so, like, nasty. Yeah. And then you actually get, like, give them the benefit of the doubt, you actually talk to them, you realise, it might be just something like about a bad day. And it's sometimes really difficult, when you're writing something down to convey the same kind of like intonation or kind of tone or whatever that you would do when you're talking to someone face to face. And generally, it's like, I think now I've kind of learned to kind of almost like imagine me saying that thing, whatever it is, whether it's a nice comment, a not so nice comment, anywhere in between, and think like, what's this person actually thinking? Like, what's this person? Like, what's the issue or the problem or the thing they're actually trying to communicate? Not the literal words they're using, but like what are they using those words to try and communicate? So I think then it makes it a lot easier. But I think to start with, like, you do basically literally just read the comments and be like, this person said you're a con artist, and you're like, that's incredibly hurtful. Like,
I'm not.
It's like, well, yeah, I was just like, how do I convince this person over the internet that I'm not actually a con man?
I'm sitting there with a project that's been delayed by a countless number of months. I've seemed to have taken in what people would consider a reasonably large amount of money. I have not yet fulfilled the project, even though I was telling people I would expect it to be delivered in June. There's. Yeah, I can understand, but
I mean,
that's
the thing is as well. Like, it's frustrating because it's like I'm having conversations with people. Like, I totally get it. Like, this is really bloody annoying. Like, I've been in this position as a backer before, where someone's made, they've overpromised due to inexperience or just enthusiasm. Let's be honest. And gone, hey, you're going to get your game by this point, or it's going to have this, that, and the other, and then it arrives and it's not what you were expecting, or it wasn't there when you were expected it. And the person goes, crap, I messed up. And I even found myself doing it, to be honest. Even when I've been in this position, thinking, did they do that on purpose? Or are they just incompetent? And, like, I think the difficulty is that so many people have been burned on online platforms. Not necessarily Kickstarter, but, things like eBay or whatever, where you have a really negative experience of interacting with someone selling you something or taking your money for something like Kickstarter, that when something does go wrong, people, including myself, you make an assumption about that person in a negative way. You kind of filter it through that negative experience, which that whole kind of like thinking process has helped me understand why people. It was quite confusing when there was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of positivity around the campaign, and a few things started going wrong, and then the whole tone shifted, and it wasn't as if it was different people; it was pretty much the same people. But I think it was because they felt like they'd been tricked, I think, or like they felt like they'd been misled, I guess.
Is it not more the case that if you become because Kickstarter is about emotional investment. The best and most successful campaigns, if you look down the comments, the ones that really, really storm it, always have a vibrant community. I remember seeing Frank West with City of Kings, the number of comments that he has on there. I remember the wonderful Mark Neidlinger, who, by the way, keeps on going on. I don't mention him enough in the podcast. So hi, Mark, my good man. You're the best. And again, it's the kind of the community. Is it a case that if things were kind of obviously things you're getting updates and we're going, oh, I was championing this, and now I kind of by proxy also look like a bit of a fool for telling my friends about it and welcoming people in and encouraging them to be part of the community and kind of buy into the kind of the message as well. So when people are like, actually this is a delay, people kind of go, oh shit, well I've invested my time in this, and this is now I'm now looking like a bit of a fool for being the champion of this game when I thought it was going to be wonderful and fantastic and everything like that.
Well, yeah, I mean that's exactly it. I mean, it's honestly the most depressing thing that's come out of this whole debacle. Has been, going from that last couple of hours in the campaign where it's been like this live stream and seeing people being so excited and so enthusiastic and honestly just incredibly supportive. Not necessarily because they were like, I really personally am invested in Peter's success, or anything like that, but just they really liked what we were doing and they really wanted to help see that go forward. And then seeing those same people feel like they, like I said, feel like they were misled. And then, when they discuss their experiences, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or Kickstarter or whatever, they're talking about the project in a really different way. And it's really difficult to see because obviously I want to solve those problems. It's constantly frustrating that I can't just flick a magic switch and make it all work. There's so many different moving parts of the project and there's so many different problems that have happened in the meantime that it isn't as simple as just going, oh, well, we just need to do this. You know, I'm looking at my whiteboard right now, and there's like 3 or 4 different things that I need to do tomorrow to make sure that things keep moving in the right direction.
Did you get caught up in the kind of, I guess, the hype? Looking back with some of the,
definitely.
Looking at stretch goals and stuff like that.
I mean, frankly, I panicked. Like, honestly, I remember day 2 of the campaign, basically just like sat there, like 1,000-yard stare, going, "Oh God, did not expect this. What do I do?" Like, I was expecting to feel like really excited, and really like happy, and all I could think of was, "Oh God, is this going to be one of those campaigns where it all goes horribly wrong because it's so big?" Ironic now, but yeah, I mean, like, it was incredibly exciting, and I think because it was just me on my own for the most part, it was very hard to kind of snap out of that. Like, I mean, I was living and breathing it every waking minute. Like, my girlfriend got sick of me talking about the damn thing. Like incredibly supportive, but I'm not surprised that she told me to stop talking about board games a few times during that month. But yeah, I mean, there was times when I was working, like 20-hour days, just like sat on the comment section pretty much the whole day, talking to people, making sure they had their questions answered, updating stuff, whatever. And I think that did make it difficult to separate myself from it and reapproach it as a business proposition. At a few crucial points where I felt the need to, announce all these stretch goals, announce all these little bits, and overdo it. Because I think looking back in hindsight, some of them weren't necessary, and I think if I had allowed myself a bit more space, I probably could have structured that in a way that made more sense, or was more feasible in the time, or was probably crucially simpler to deliver. Because it was some of those small details that got missed, that people were most upset about.
Like what?
So it's like one of the things with the it was a little thing at the time, but obviously it became a kind of, I think to people, a kind of marker of what had gone wrong. Was the like custom meeples for the horrors. So this design that we came up with, Zach came up with for this like custom wood thing for the horror meeples. But when I chatted it through, when we kind of unlocked the stretch goal with Tim, and to be honest, I should have had this conversation with him a long time before that. He was like, "Nah, this doesn't really work, I don't think." So like, okay, well, Tim is the designer of the game, and we kind of put him in a creative director role within the kind of Sub Terra team as such. So at that point I was like, right, okay, well if Tim thinks that's going to affect the gameplay in a negative way, then let's not do it. That doesn't seem sensible. Yeah. And I didn't tell people straight away. I think I popped in a comment or something when someone mentioned it, or like buried it in an update somewhere, rather than kind of putting it at the forefront, because I didn't think, at the time, I didn't really think people would mind that much. But because a few other bits and bobs weren't quite as people expected, obviously people started looking through the project, kind of, well, what else did they cut corners on? Understandably looking at it in that way, to be honest. And it ended up a few details like that getting missed or being done in a slightly different way that people expected.
Yeah.
It kind of compounded the situation. So like, we ended up with like a lot of small issues that I think individually no one really would have really cared about. Maybe some of them, but I think because there was that plus the kind of the shipping delays and the kind of the unmatched expectations, people got pretty annoyed, to be honest. Like, it started off as being like, that's a bit annoying, to like, okay, this is pretty frustrating now, to like downright like, we hate you, what are you doing with our money kind of thing. And again, when you can't sort it out straight away, that gets pretty stressful. Because when someone emails me and be like, hey, where's my game? It's not an easy problem to solve. It's not like you just kind of, there's a screen in front of you that tells you. You have to look that information up. And when you've got that times 1,000 every day, it gets pretty crazy. Like, it's completely understandable. I mean, I've actually just built a Salesforce system, so I can deal with everything a bit more efficiently. So we can do things a little faster for people. But yeah, it's those little bits that
it's multiplying it by 6,000.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. I think if it had been because I mean, I don't think I've seen. There's at the moment, and this is the key time of the year. Let's face it, Chinese New Year is upon us, there's going to be a lot of places kind of closing down all month. And, because of that, I have probably seen about 5 or 6 kind of communications coming in from different companies saying, guys, the factory is closing, therefore we haven't quite made the time that we were expecting to, but now unfortunately it's going to be another 6 weeks before we kind of clear the time. And when you increase that by obviously number of games and 6,000 kind of, when one problem has to get multiplied by 6,000 times, it's almost like an update. An update isn't going to cut it.
No, not exactly.
Because if it's 100 people and you're putting out an update, it's still a community. It's like 100 people and folk will be like, that's all right, I'll be fine. When you get 6,000 people, people are like, well, I'm part of a large customer base now, so I expect you're almost moving into that individuality kind of thing. So if you are saying, oh, I'm sorry, but you 20 guys, your shipping's going to be late. Those 20 guys are like, that's, okay. And they console each other and say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's fine. If you multiply that by 30 and it's all of a sudden it's 600 guys, then people are obviously, it turns into a crowd and then it can turn into a mob, and then, but you can kind of understand as well, from a kind of a, from a certain point of view.
I mean, I think one of the, sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
I mean, I think we were talking about this last week. We had a big team meeting, just kind of like regrouping after the Newspeak campaign and stuff. And we sat down and we thought, like, what was the, aside from the kind of the things that happened, the kind of problems that happened, like, how could we have managed this whole situation better? And we kind of reached the conclusion in the team that one of the things we've made a sort of serious misstep on was the way we presented ourselves. I think I don't really know where it came from, to be honest, but there was a point where we shifted from it's kind of Pete and his mates in his bedroom, like knocking about doing a project, to inside the box board games publishing kind of thing. And I think part of that was, we've got multiple games in the catalogue. I'm trying to build up brands. We've got a bigger presence at conventions and stuff like that. We were aspiring to be this big successful studio, and kind of wanted to show that to people. At the same time, I think people, I even had it today, to be honest, and someone referred to our social media department, and I was like, I just kind of like looked at Paul and was like, so that's you then, who's also customer service and logistics as well, and conventions and community and all the other things he does. And it just struck me that, like, if someone at this point in the kind of the pipeline feels as though they're not understanding what the company is, in terms of like how big it is and where it kind of sits in that kind of customer expectations kind of thing, we're not FFG. We don't have a whole room full of people answering your customer queries. It's usually just like whoever can get to the email fast enough.
But is it not also the thing as well that as if you're funded by, you're funded by a £350,000, and then there's all of a sudden there's a rebranding exercise and a big name, and folk are like going, oh well, okay, so who's paying for this then, kind of thing? What isn't the money supposed to go into the board game, as opposed to kind of like making you look like you've got a pretty logo and everything else, kind of thing?
Yeah, the logo cost £200 because a mate did it, and it's a damn good logo. It was Lewis from Blenkharn Games actually. Did me a deal. But yeah, I think the big problem, it's not like we spent a huge amount of money on marketing or anything like that. It was more the kind of the style of communication that we think caused the problem. It's like kind of referring to ourselves as ITB and referring to ourselves as the company and the team. And I think we kind of picked up cues from other companies that we kind of respected and kind of aspired to be like, but ended up kind of parroting the way they talked about things rather than thinking about the most appropriate way to kind of talk about ourselves. So we ended up, this is only really our perspective, to be honest, but we kind of feel like we presented ourselves as this big successful company when in fact we were this like small studio that was doing all right. We'd had a bit of success, but we were hardly FFG. And I think that's kind of where we fell into a bit of a trap to ourselves, to be honest. We kind of shot ourselves in the foot a bit. where people's expectations of us kind of, when we talked about ourselves as this big successful company, which realistically we weren't, and then we'd got so much money in from that campaign, like people's expectations went from indie board game Kickstarter to, the kind of service you expect from like a CMON project where, they've got a customer service team and they've got a lot of people backing them up, because it was a similar level of campaign, I guess.
Yeah, but the UK had some successes with the Kickstarters. As I say, we've already spoken about the wonderful, amazing Frank West and What City of Kings happened, and then there's Kevin Young,
absolutely,
as well. And they were all campaigns that reached kind of into kind of six figures.
Yeah.
Do you think that, looking further back, there was a couple of things that you had to get sorted out with, statecraft? Did that also kind of did it also kind of compound the situation a little bit as well? Did you get people kind of coming back and going, there's a couple of things with statecraft kind of thing? That was pretty all sorted out as far as I was aware.
Honestly, yeah. Not to the same extent, really. To be honest, what ended up happening with both projects to different extents and in different ways was we had a very ambitious project, and the difficulty was because the ambition didn't really go away after the end of the project. We ended up kind of pouring more ambition into stuff, which meant that those odd little bits from the statecraft campaign didn't get done as fast as they maybe could have been done. So when we were launching the campaign, people were like, well, what about those things you start to sort out? And I think the difficulty was that I didn't do a particularly good job of letting people know how those things were getting done, just that they were getting done. So people were like, okay, it was lovely that you're saying it's on its way or it's getting done, but like I have no understanding of whether that's just like corporate babble or whether it's like, this is actually happening. So it's things like, the production for Statecraft and Sub Terra happened at the same time because a lot of the artwork and stuff that was being finished off for Statecraft took a lot longer than we expected.
Yeah.
And for Sub Terra, it took a heck of a shorter time than we thought. So they coincided. And then basically just ended up not doing a very good job of saying what was going on, and people got confused and got frustrated. And it didn't really affect the Sub Terra campaign, I don't think. But I think because of those issues kind of affected two campaigns, people's faith in our ability to actually deliver stuff really declined. It didn't. I don't think it really felt from their perspective like it was an isolated incident. It was more like this is how they roll. Which was unfortunate because to an extent, it was a fuck up on both parts, but it was at the same time things were getting significantly better, week by week. It was just that big things were happening in the meantime.
Yeah. Fulfillment comes round, and that leads to, you must have been sitting there going, well, finally getting everything kind of out the door, and then, there's kind of then people are asking about kind of tracking and where their orders are and stuff like that, which is still something which is kind of occurring at the moment for some of the Sub Terra, for some of the Sub Terra kind of backers. What kind of happened with that? What was the situation? Because it appeared that the UK got their stuff. The US was waiting for some time, and then you kind of got the bit where you got people kind of, and I don't know. I've seen this quite recently with Pandasaurus and Dinosaur Island, where people were playing the game, people who had backed the game were waiting for the game, and then people were also waiting for other parts as well. Did you just roll your eyes and switch off your computer and then crawl under your duvet when you started to get reports that things weren't kind of? Because I can understand you just going, oh, for fuck's sake.
Honestly, the temptation is there every day. It's not easy when you get up in the morning and the first thing you see is an inbox full of people going, what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
It's not good, especially when you can't do anything about it, or you can't do anything about it fast enough, or you don't know what to do about it. I mean, as much as we try our best to be like, be clear with the information that we've got and kind of pass it on to backers, what they don't. I mean, I'm like this. If someone comes back to you with an email from a company and says, "You know what, I have no idea," like it doesn't exactly strike a lot of trust in your belief in a company that can actually do stuff. But unfortunately, that's the case half the time.
I mean, I think that what happened was, and I remember one thing in the comments was somebody brought up was it the Games Quest? Because it was Games Quest you used, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For the fulfillment. So they brought up the Games Quest terms and conditions from the Games Quest website, and it says, "We will aim to dispatch your order within X amount of time, and you'll have a tracking number," and everything like that. And I don't think they realised at the time that Games Quest was an actual kind of retailer. I mean, in that situation, it's kind of completely out of your hands, and you're kind of relying on kind of third party information. But was there a system? Am I right in saying there was like some kind of system error regarding the tracking numbers getting sent out to people that had ordered?
There's been a few. I'm not going to say errors, to be honest. I think it's just a few problems that needed to be solved. Like I think, unfortunately, we ended up bad timing really, where Games Quest ended up in a similar kind of part, like a similar kind of bit in their kind of business timeline as Watts did, where they got a huge amount of growth. They've been doing incredibly well. A lot of Kickstarters have been using them. Their retail sales have picked up massively. They're expanding far faster than they ever thought they would be doing. They've been doing a really good job of it. But the difficulty with that kind of speed of growth, as Watts saw as well, was that it takes you by surprise, and a lot of the preparations that you feel like you need to basically always feel like they need to have been done 6 months ago, rather than now. And yeah, what ended up happening to them is that they got really stretched. Honestly, like they were getting absolutely inundated with business. And I really feel for them, because I mean they're not in a position where they can go, oh, you know what, we'll just not take that business because we're too busy at the moment. Like, you can't afford to do that. But at the same time, with like recently, we got to a point where we're like, right, okay, we're out. We've got all these like tracking number problems sorted. We've got all this stuff sorted, and then 3 CMON projects land up in their warehouse, and it clogs up the entire warehouse system, so that they basically can't physically do anything until they get rid of the damn boxes. So not just us, there's other campaigns, other customers as well who are kind of stuck until this stuff gets sorted. And understandably, Sub Terra backers are like, why on earth is this project that just came in being done before our project that's late? I mean, it's just unfortunately the kind of the quirk of the logistical kind of like pipeline at that point was that's what happened. But yeah, I mean, we've been unlucky with a few things and have made some mistakes in others, and unfortunately they're kind of aligned in the worst possible way. The kind of timings really hit us. But yeah, I mean, like to their credit, with the resources that they've got, Games Quest has done a good job. There's been some problems, and there always is with logistics. But I think we got hit hard with a few big problems. That's been hard to come back from.
Yeah, I think, as I said, there was some things with tracking numbers not going out. So I think Paul was emailing people kind of individual tracking numbers of some sort.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been obviously the American fulfillment as well, which is kind of still. I think there's still some people kind of saying, I've not got theirs kind of yet. I mean, again, is it just the numbers? Is it just like the going from a potential 300 unit product up to 6,000 is just, I'm guessing that it was Rising Sun that was arriving at.
Yeah, it was
Games Quest.
Rising Sun, Zombicide, Green Horde, and Smog all at the same time.
Right. Okay. So that's gonna have a slight effect on where you can sit down and have your lunch, but
just a bit. I mean, and to be fair, like as much as I want to be like stamp my feet up and down and go like, why don't you do my project first? Like this is probably one of the. I think I would imagine CMON's their biggest customer by a long way, and they can't really afford to. They can afford to piss me off, but they can't afford to piss them off at all. And But yeah, I mean, the US orders was a really annoying one. I mean, I'm not even sure if anyone really knows this other than like the company, to be honest. I haven't really talked about it too much. It's kind of a one-off thing. But before Christmas, when we were sorting out what at the time we thought was all the US orders and getting us finally out of the door, the system that uses basically there was a lot of like prep work that ended up taking a lot longer than they expected to package up and get all the orders sorted and then basically parcel them all up ready to go, put them in a big stack, whack them on a plane, fly them over to the US and then ship them domestically. I think they call it line hauling. Anyway, it worked out the kind of quickest / cheapest, most effective way overall of getting them there. The difficulty was at the time because of the change in the sharp change in the pound to dollar rate. There'd been some ridiculous amount of US customers buying products in Europe ready for Christmas. It was unprecedented level of online sales from US buying into the European market, which meant that all of the airlines that operated sort of freight in between the two had tons more business than they were used to, and they basically didn't have the space for it. So they tripled all their prices overnight with no notice. So basically what happened is the big companies were like, well, I'm not paying that. So they went to the slightly smaller companies who went, well, I'm not paying it either. Who went to the smaller companies who went, well, neither am I. And eventually gets passed down to the people who don't have a choice, which is me. And they go, here's a bill for 10 grand. And it's basically BA's fault if you want to blame someone for it. Because of this weird condition in the market, they basically just said, like, cough up the money or your games aren't getting shipped until well after Christmas. So at that point, our capital took an absolutely massive walloping on the basis of something really weird. And then what happened, just to make it even worse, was the warehouse partner that because GamesQuest have two sites that they use. The kind of the other site that they're using for the Sub Terra stuff. I honestly still don't know how it happened, but they managed to miss 140 orders out of the 2,700 that there is for the US. Don't really know how it happened, but those ones didn't get put on that big package of stuff, and then we only realised once people had actually got their stuff, and they were like, "Where's these other ones gone?" I'm getting emails from people, and again that meant actually sorting all that stuff, getting it processed, and then we get slammed with all the CMON stuff, and then it kind of the little problems add up until we can't do anything about them, and you just have to wait even longer, and then more problems come up. So it's been a bit of a saga with that lot stuff, I have to be honest. And unfortunately, GamesQuest isn't Amazon. They don't have unlimited capacity.
No.
So the kind of conditions are dictated to them by what business is coming in, what information they're getting in advance, and how that differs from reality. Sometimes they get stuff that's twice the size of what the customer said it was. It just happens like that. I mean, they told me about a customer in the US a while ago, one of their sort of publisher customers, who didn't tell them the stuff was arriving. So they kind of knew that, sometime over the next 6 months, we're probably expecting a few pallets of Game X. And Game X arrived completely out of the blue. They weren't expecting it, and suddenly, they've got a publisher on the phone saying, "Wow, my game's been posted out within 2 days of them arriving." And obviously, that's not realistic. You need to keep them in the loop. But yeah, it's just I kind of feel like I'm making excuses, to be honest with you, which is a shame, really. But yeah, it's been hard to navigate all of those things. I guess hard for me to plan for them, because I wasn't really aware that they were a thing. If that makes sense. Which is largely due to my experience, and I think GamesQuest have been caught by a few of these unusual situations, like the stuff with the sort of the air freight over Christmas. I mean, they basically said to me, like, we've not seen this happen before. It's just a completely weird, freaky thing as a result of post-Brexit, exchange rates. Which kind of in isolation it's kind of really interesting, to be honest, to see how something that abstract can have such a tangible effect on a business. He kind of screwed us to the tune of £10,000 that we didn't really get anything out of, other than sticking to the original plan, which is a bit gutted. It's not like we got special shipping for that. But yeah.
Moving on to Newspeak,
Mm-hmm.
because you dusted yourself down, you were aware there was still kind of things going on, and in fairness, in the background, the Newspeak hype machine was kind of building. There was a general buzz about it. The playtesting seemed to be going well. Obviously, the Sub Terra is still happening in the background. And then you go ahead and say, right, okay, you press go on the Newspeak campaign, and then it kind of has a decent start, and then they kind of. How did you feel when you saw the first kind of comments coming in? The first kind of "don't back this" kind of warning comments coming in on the Newspeak campaign.
Honestly, distraught. Yeah, I mean, that first few hours was brutal. Like, it was really hard to see. It made me doubt everything that we were doing. And I think that's probably a good thing, but in the long run. But yeah, it was pretty damn gutting. We'd gone from, okay, we've worked really hard, we've done all this prep for this campaign, we're really excited about it, and then it was a punch in the gut, basically. It was basically the backers telling us we're not happy yet. We might be in the future, but we're not now. And as a result of which, we're not going near your campaign, and we're going to suggest that other people follow suit. And yeah, I mean, we got it. We understood. There was we understand. We misjudged it. We were under the mistaken impression that the majority of people were, disappointed with how things had gone, but were generally happy with, their games were good, they were produced well. We clearly put a lot of effort into them. But yeah, like I said, it was gutting. Honestly, it was really upsetting to see that the expectations we had for the campaign weren't realised in that first day. It massively underestimated how people felt.
Was there any part of you that thought, no, let's just try and power through this and see where the campaign goes anyway, or did you think, well, we kind of have to pull, we have to look at kind of pulling the plug here? Because I remember speaking to you on Skype on the first day and just asking you if you were all right, because I know that you kind of, in our conversations off pod, that you're very passionate about what you do and stuff like that, and I know that you do take some things to kind of to heart, and I don't suppose you can't not, unless you were kind of like a robot. I mean, did you think we've got to close that down, or are we still hopeful things might turn around?
I mean, I kind of went through a bit of a roller coaster of emotions in the first few days, to be honest. Particularly the first day of the campaign, I can't really remember, I was a bit out of it by that point, but I think I'd worked 36 hours straight. I worked all the way through the night with the video animator John to get everything sorted last minute, which is a bit stressful, but kind of part of the job. And saw the launch, got the team together. I managed to crash for an hour just to get some energy back, and got up after a bit, saw that it wasn't doing too well, or at least not as well as we'd hoped. That was a bit gutting. And then I guess jumped into, we've just got to keep moving, it's a drawback, but we can't just stop kind of mode. And then we did the launch party, which was an absolutely massive success. I mean, we had 200 people turn up over the course of the evening. It was amazing fun. It was so great. We had loads of people who from all over London and from elsewhere who'd come to the event, just really interested to see what we'd done. People who weren't in the games, people who were hardcore gamers. We had people from London on board who knew their games really well, and people who were just generally interested in the idea. We even had people walking off the street who were like, "This looks cool. What's this?" But yeah, it was a really positive evening. And then we realised that even in spite of that, it wasn't going well as a project. And that realistically, we had to make a choice. It was like, well, do we carry on and kind of use this as an opportunity to show people that we do care about our backers, we do care about actually doing what we set out to do in the first place, no matter what it takes, or do we cancel it and focus on the stuff that we still got outstanding? Because at that point we were like, well, the commercial success of the campaign isn't really what we're thinking about anymore. It's like, how do we build up that trust again? How do we help people to feel as though we do actually give a shit? Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, I'm not doing this for the money. That's like probably the number one thing that anyone working in board games says. Like, unless you're working for Asmodee or whatever, like, you do this because you love doing it. Like, I'm quite lucky in that I could have had a well-paid job if I'd wanted one, kind of thing. But this stuff's so damn fun, couldn't resist. And I think that whole experience really focused us on, like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we in this job? Like, why are we putting ourselves through hell for the sake of a job that's not, really giving us any money? I'm pretty much broke half the time, spending it all on board games. And we realised it is because we love it, and it's because we really care about what we do. And we're like, well, if that's the case, then the best decision is to focus on proving that to people. And that's kind of what led to cancelling the campaign. We were like, okay, right, people have expressed implicitly by not backing the project or explicitly by commenting on it and kind of giving their thoughts that they don't think this shows us in the best light. They don't think that this proves to them that we care, and it exacerbates the existing problems.
Lack of humility or lack of holding your hands up and saying, like, let's wait until we get things sorted.
Yeah, I think that's genuinely what people thought, and it was difficult to kind of sit back and we were wrong, like, we messed this right up. I mean, part of me was thinking we've got to push the company forward. We've got to get through this problem. And we've got to kind of work through it. Part of that was my stubbornness, I think, trying to kind of let's keep pushing and keep going forward. Keep making good games. I wasn't worried about the bottom line. I mean, it's something that any company struggles with, is thinking, can we afford to just wait for 6 months and see what happens? It's a dangerous position to be in. But at the end of the day, we made that call. It's like it's worth taking the risk. If we're in a position where we're kind of like compromising on those kind of, it sounds a bit like up yourself, but compromising on those principles of like why we're actually doing this in the first place, then what are we doing? Like, none of us are, like you said, doing this just because it earns us lots of money, because it doesn't. So if we're making decisions on the basis of kind of characteristics that we don't think of what we should be doing, it sounds a bit wrong. So yeah, I mean, it made the most sense. Like, we all sat around and were like, yeah, this is what we need to do. We need to cancel. We need to hunker down and focus on getting that stuff sorted, and kind of spending as much time and energy as we can on delivering those bits. And like I said before, like, showing people that we will do whatever it takes. Like, we'll fix every little problem. We'll spend the money. We'll spend the time. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take or what we have to do. Like, I mean, at one point I kind of like flippantly said, if I have to like visit 100 backers, like in that house, and shake their hands personally and say thank you, I'll damn well do it. Like, it sounds silly. It sounds like I'm being kind of facetious, but like, I genuinely mean it. Like, if it was feasible, like, logistically and financially, to visit every single backer and say thank you in person, I would do it. Like, one of the most amazing things that I think I've experienced as part of this whole, stressful, terrifying, horrendous, wonderful, exciting journey that it's been so far, was at Expo last year, when there was someone that came up to me and said thank you to me. And I just like, what? And they're just like, like, I really, really enjoyed, the campaign. I thought it was really fun, and the game was awesome, and just want to say thank you for all your effort you put in and that kind of thing. And I was like, what the hell are you saying thank you to me for? You're the one that was just like, I'm going to take a punt on this random northern bloke in England, and just like, I'm gonna back him for a few quid, and hope that something good comes out the other end of it. And that was the best bit. It was like, that's why you do Kickstarter. That's why you don't, just sell your game off to some big distributor and that's the end of it. But yeah, I guess this is a long way of saying, like, basically keep throwing the harsh words at me, I guess, like, because I'm going to listen. Like, as much of it kind of self-flagellatory as the whole thing is, like, I mean, I said to people before, like, it's good that they're saying when they're unhappy. Because, like, I think one of the problems with the Newspeak campaign was that we thought that people were generally happy, apart from these couple of issues. Or at least we kind of characterised them in that way, and that was a mistake. But when people tell you when they're unhappy, you can do something about it. And then, when you do something about it, it shows, obviously, you care and that you really do value what they've got to say. But I think the difficulty was that we hadn't really understood people well enough to kind of follow that through. So, yeah.
So Newspeak will be back at some point in the future.
Yeah,
once
absolutely.
Things kind of get cleared away. Obviously, if there's anybody out there that's listening to Peter and they want to, kind of, what's the best way to kind of reach out to you guys at the moment? I know they can obviously they've got. You can obviously go through your Kickstarter and your messages, but if anybody wants to kind of reach out regarding the Sub Terra campaign or ask questions about Newspeak or anything like that, what's the easiest way to reach out to you that way?
Yes, I mean, if it's like a general question, best person to get in contact with is Paul. That's community@itvboardgames.com. So chuck him an email, and he'll get back to you. Like, it's as simple as that, really. If you've got like you need like a replacement part for your game, or you're not sure what's happening with your game, if it's not been delivered yet, again, same email address. If you want to talk to me directly, then my email's contact@itvboardgames.com. It's like horrendously generic, but that one goes straight to me. The emails is probably the best way to get in contact with us if you want like a specific thing sorted out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty with platforms like Kickstarter and Facebook is that it's not very easy to manage. Which things need like something sorting, and which things is just like, oh, that's cool.
Just a generic comment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And it's like sometimes it's not like if you read through every single comment and every single interaction on Facebook, I think you'd probably go mad. It's just not feasible, and because it's not structured in a way that's really meant for that kind of thing. I mean, on the Kickstarter front, I've been spending a lot of time recently building a system into Salesforce actually, so that I can manage Kickstarter comments and Kickstarter messages in the same way we deal with like sort of like customer service emails, where it's like, I need a replacement for this, because generally on Kickstarter it's like a specific issue that needs to be dealt with. But yeah, that's gonna take a bit of time to implement, I think. But yeah, anyway, so a bit of a rambling answer, but basically contact at ITB Board Games or community at ITB Board Games and you'll get an answer.
Okay. Yeah, so as I said, Peter's given you the email addresses, so any questions at all, reach out, don't stay silent, and he'll do his best to kind of help you out.
Absolutely.
As much as he can, yeah. Thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem at all.
I think having a chat about this is probably better than putting out is also better than maybe putting out an update, because you get a tone.
Yeah. It's like I was saying before. I mean, like all these like different platforms, it's hard to get 100% of what someone's saying. And yeah, it's nice. I think it'd be nice if I could like sit in a room with all the backers and just be like, "Hey guys, like I'm really struggling here. Give me a break for a second and I'll sort it." Because I think they'd be like, "All right, it's just this northern bloke who's probably flapping a bit and needs a bit of a break, or maybe he needs a." It's the kind of thing where I imagine in that kind of context. I mean, it's happened before where I've been talking to someone and they're like, "Oh, they've got a complaint to make or something," and then you explain to them what it is face to face, and they go, "Oh, actually, I can sort that out for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's really helpful, thanks."
That's cool. No, this has been this has been. I was going to say it's been a lot of fun, but it's not, because it's kind of like, it'd be a lot of fun if I was some kind of sociopath, kind of sitting there and going, "Okay, let's hear you suffer, Blenkharn. This is good. I'm well enjoying myself." But if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, you can get us through the usual channels. You can get it through Facebook at We're Not Wizards. You can get us through Twitter at We're Not Wizards. You can get us through YouTube. If you go to YouTube and if you search for We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast, you can find us there. You can find us on Stitcher and Spreaker and potentially Spotify. We still haven't heard whether or not Spotify is going to be having us on. Don't know. They might do, they might not. The decision's in their hands. You can obviously you can email us, which is magic@We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Instagram, which is We're Not Wizards. You can support us through Patreon, which is We're Not Wizards as well. And we thank everybody who decides to chuck us a buck, which is really nice of you. If you like what you've listened to tonight, then please tell other people, let other people aware that we exist. We appreciate every single person that drops by, says hello, and listens to the show. If you really like us, then please jump onto iTunes and drop us a subscription. If you like us even more, drop us a review or a rating. And as we say, if you are going to give us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because that'll make us big-headed. Don't give us 1, because that'll make us cry. Give us a 5, because it's in the middle, and it's average, and we are decidedly average. But again, person who's not been average, and we appreciate his time, is Mr. Peter Blenkharn. So thank you again, Peter, for coming on. Thank you very, very much for your time and for being kind of open and honest about the campaign, which is much appreciated. There's only a couple more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Peter?
Oh, we're definitely not wizards.
Definitely not wizards. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye. It's a goodbye from Mr. Peter Blenkharn from Inside the Box Board Games. So say goodbye, Peter.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe. Roll 6s. Guess what? I sent an email to Kilmini or Not or Simon. We'll see what happens. They'll probably say no.
So their corporate machine works well.
I'm tempted. I know. It's probably already got me on spam filter or something. Straight in the spam. Don't let him on. However, we've got lots of lovely people coming up over the next couple of weeks, including the one of the designers from Dinosaur Island, Mr. Brian Lewis, who worked along with John Gilmore. He's going to be coming on the show to be talking about Dinosaur Island, as well as any other projects he's got working in. We are going to be speaking to Dave Carroll's coming back on from Steamforge Games. We've got Katie from Katie's Game Corner. She's coming back on as well. We have got Mike Barnes is coming back on from Who Dares Rolls. It's just many people. Tristan Hall's coming back on.
Oh, awesome.
It's just so packed. We've got Ian McAllister from The Giant Brain. We've got I just can't even talk about it. It's just a plethora of people that you should be coming on and listening to. But again, thank you for listening. But until the next time, goodbye.